Hello, I have a question for you today that I hope is an interesting one. And the question is this: what is adult entertainment? Now, I am 38 years old and I deal with stories. And so I look at stories, I look at a wide array of stories and a wide array of things. And like anyone who is going towards their 30s, I wonder what happened to the stuff that was around in my youth, when I was a kid. What happened, you could never imagine back then that video games or that the music that you listened to would evolve to something and would then become part of history, and basically would be gone or would be evolved. And when I say what is adult entertainment, I'm not talking about the stuff that we call adult entertainment. I'm not talking about porn, in effect, because, ironically enough, most of porn isn't particularly adult, but is very juvenile sort of entertainment. And I'm sure there is pornography that deals with sexuality in an adult and mature way, or rather represents sexuality the way you experience it when you are in your 30s or in your 40s. But yeah, that's not what I mean, strictly speaking. So, adult entertainment, mature entertainment, mostly because it's an easy target and because it also is a very rewarding place to go to, are computer games, video games. What does it mean, an adult video game, a mature video game? I don't think there are very many mature video games, certainly not if you look at the mainstream thing, and it's not a bad thing. There can be something like great juvenile video games, or great video games that are just at the cusp of maturity. And one of these examples that I want to give, and now again I have to say that I'm not trying to be judgmental here, so I know people have strong opinions about their particular video games, their particular favorites, and I'm not trying to knock anything here that you enjoy and that you like, because that example that I use as a juvenile video game, or a video game on the cusp, basically, and let's say in the last stages of puberty perhaps, is a game that I enjoyed very much and that I liked very much, and this is The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt. It is a wonderful juvenile game. It has little forays into maturity, so this means it has self-awareness. If you don't know what The Witcher is, it's a fantasy game based on a Polish series of books about the Witcher, in a fantasy world where monsters roam, like a quasi-medieval kind of world with magical elements. This Witcher is hunting beasts that terrorize the people, and it's used to be, at least in the books, a commentary on fairy tales, a very sardonic and ironic commentary on fairy tales and the way they use story elements, as well as a historical, sometimes moral look at, like a pseudo-history of a fantasy world. The idea that it becomes a story that questions morality or explores morality or the grey areas between morality is one that I think was more propagated by the games when these books were then turned into games. The third one, The Wild Hunt, being the most successful and most critically acclaimed, rightfully so, of the series. Now, the claim for maturity that it has is the story of The Witcher is self-referential. It knows what it is and it plays around with that occasionally, but it also takes itself serious, and to make a point, and it has a very grey, a very interesting attitude towards the grey areas, where usually in fantasy, not anymore, but the classical cliché is that fantasy is always black and white. You have your Tolkien with the really bad guys and the really good guys. And books like Game of Thrones or the Witcher series were breaking up that sort of cliché a little bit. There you have that. But why is it not mature yet, you say? You're saying all of these things, that it deals with questions of grey areas, that it's self-aware, that it's what else is it? That it has a sense of humour that is very grown up at some points, that it is violent, that it's full of sex, that it deals with 16 and 18 and above themes and so on. So why is it not mature? And I say it's reaching into maturity because sometimes it deals with questions, emotional questions that you inevitably struggle with when you get older. And these are questions of loss, these are questions of failure, these are questions of existence, basically, of where you are, of why you are there, why should you be there, and also struggles to keep the curiosity and the interest in the world alive, to not lose the spirit of creativity, to not lose connection with your childhood. And those, I think, would be subjects that I would call mature subjects. And looking through that lens of mature subjects, you can look at anything. You can look at relationships, you can look at sexuality, you can look at the approach to society, the approach towards work, the approach towards social issues at large, and so on. And The Witcher is not mature because at heart it is a fantasy novel, and a fantasy novel is a juvenile genre. It can be a great juvenile genre because it keeps that this forceful imagination alive, and it is starting to mature because it deals not only with what it is in a mature way, but also with the history of its genre and with the history of what is good, what is evil, and so on. So that's an example for something that deals a little bit with maturity. Another example from last year was a game called Disco Elysium. And the Disco Elysium, it's very hard to describe if you have no idea what it is. It is a role-playing game. That means you assume the role of a character in a world, and you go through text-based and decision-based and roll of a dice-based adventure that you go through, where you decide what the character says, how a character approaches a situation, and how a character resolves a situation. And it's, let's call it maybe a neo-noir kind of thing. In the fictional city of Revachol, you play a down-on-his-luck cop who is drunk, who has sort of amnesia, and who has lots of mental issues. And in fact, and that is what makes this game brilliant, again, as a self-referential thing. It knows what it is, and it uses these elements to very great effect, and it is not only a good story, but also a reflection on the kind of story that it is that these mental deficiencies, his illnesses, basically are his character abilities. So the voices in your head are the way this character relates to the world around him, relates to everything that happens. So everything that he sees, he has these whispers from different abilities or different mental abnormalities that keep talking to him. And so it is a perfectly interesting representation. One thing that I have never seen in a video game is that you can fail in basic actions of approaching somebody and talking to them in a normal way. And this has happened to all of us, I am sure. We are there, we are trying to talk to someone who is for some reason important to us, whether this is someone we're attracted to, whether this is someone we want something from, a promising job interview, something like that, and we completely fail mentally. On a mental level, we're just, even before the words come out of our mouths, we have already broken down and failed. And so it very faithfully represents an aspect of life, as at least as I experience it. And so this, among other things, gives this a level of maturity, Disco Elysium. What else? It is clearly written by somebody who knows or who has a broad range of knowledge on different subjects, from psychology to sociology to history. And the way the world is built is not only a world building exercise, but already a critique on the world and on those different subjects. It integrates theory, it integrates a lot of different approaches and ideas into the narrative itself. So it is a mature narrative in Disco Elysium, because it deals with a wide range of subjects, not just a mature representation of what life perhaps is like, but also a mature look at the world. And a third example that I would add to that, or rather a second example of a game that I would put into the adult entertainment, the maturity section of my thoughts, is What Remains of Edith Finch. What Remains of Edith Finch is a game made up of vignettes, and each of these vignettes tells the fate of a member of a family. And you play one member of that family who comes back to the childhood home and is exploring in this childhood home all the different fates of the members of her family. To say much more would be to spoil the story, so I don't want to say any specifics about the story. But it is a game that, unlike any other games that I played, it immediately put me back into all those stages of life that you go through. From a childhood wonder where you are inhabiting dreams and where the edge between waking and dreaming is not particularly clear, to growing up when you see perhaps life as filtered through a comic book or comic books that you have read, to there even is a quite incredible section which is both a critique on what getting lost in a game world does to the psyche of someone, as well as a good game, or as a good section of a game. And I think this alone is an incredible achievement. If anybody has played the game, it's the section with the fishes that I'm talking about. Doesn't spoil anything for those of you who haven't played it or don't know anything about it. It is and it deals with the mental issues, it deals with the issues of communication, issues of family, connections of family, the loss of connection. It deals with all those things that I spoke about earlier, what I think makes a mature game, and it does so with incredible skill as far as the storytelling goes, as well as with a magnificent understanding of the different let's call them mechanical elements of a game. And both of these things come together. The story that is being told is reflected in the mechanics of the game, and often underlined by them and made even stronger. So I would say this, to me at least until now, is the most impressive use of a video game. It's one video game that has truly grown up, and that I would say, okay, this is adult entertainment. Which doesn't mean that somebody who is not yet an adult cannot play or enjoy it. That is the wonderful thing about these things. It is fluid. It's not a strict thing that you say, oh, this is an adult thing, you're not allowed to watch this. And if we think back about adult entertainment, about porn, if somebody tells you, well, don't watch pornography, you cannot, you're too young, what are you going to do? You're going to look for pornography. So this is, this is the attempt here to explain a little bit of what adult entertainment is and how it exists in the sphere of video games. All those three games have wonderful storytelling: Witcher Wild Hunt, Disco Elysium, What Remains of Edith Finch. If you are looking for games to play, I would definitely recommend them to you for different reasons. They all offer you quite different experiences, and I'm not advertising them. I don't know why I'm doing that. I want to analyze this, not advertise games, but those are things that I would recommend you to look at. And think a little bit about this, but I don't want to deliver a definite answer on that, because I don't have any. My question remains, and this video should be a question more than an answer, and the question is, what is adult entertainment? What does that truly mean, and how does it develop? How can it develop? And I hope I've given you a little bit to think about. Thanks very much for watching. Listen to good stories, read good stories, watch good stories, and I will see you for the next video. Take care.